Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Scott, and Scott, sharp moves and early best bets. He's Scott Rickenbach with that Eagles shirt on. Had the Eagles in my Westgate and Circuit contest. Very happy with how they performed on Sunday. And of course, I'm Scott Spreitzer, and we are going to be here every Sunday night into Monday morning. You guys in the Eastern time zone, you're going to get up. You're going to be able to see these videos. If you're a night owl like me out here on the West Coast, you're going to be able to watch them late at night on Sunday nights. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to look at about 7 or 8 of the top sharp moves, line moves for the upcoming week of college football. And then Scott and I will both have early value best bets for the upcoming week. Could be college, could be pro. Tonight, a couple of college plays, so we'll get to those at the end of the show. But Scott, it's good to have you on board at DocSports.com. Let's jump right into it. Let's start talking about some line moves that we've seen thus far that jumped out at us on Sunday afternoon and early evening. And folks, these are fresh off the presses, so to speak. These are the games that the sharps hit right out of the blocks after the opening lines were released and set. And the first one on the board is the matchup between SMU and TCU. TCU, the home team here. That line has gone from 5.5 up to 7. And listen, I'm going to have a best bet on this a little bit later. But Scott, betting so far, talking to a couple of bookmakers, a little more in favor of TCU as far as the amount of tickets that have been written, but yet that line has jumped 1.5 points to a key number of 7, which tells me some of that sharp money is decent sized money.
Yes, absolutely. And I think here, everyone remembers watching the Horned Frogs. They absolutely blew out North Carolina. And then SMU blew that late 2-touchdown lead versus Baylor and lost in OT. So that's what I think is being looked at here. And this is a rivalry game and big revenge as TCU got embarrassed last year, 66-42, and their coach got ejected in the third quarter of the game. So I think that's what people are looking at here with the Horned Frogs looking for some payback, because this is a huge rivalry down in Texas.
Yeah, decent line move there, and I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end of the show. North Carolina at Central Florida. It is going to be a cool battle here. I can't wait to see UCF against Belichick, as he's had time to maybe right the ship a little bit in the last couple of weeks after the horror show in the opening game for the North Carolina Tar Heels. But what we're seeing right now, Scott, is a big move on Central Florida. This line opened 3.5, UCF at home in Orlando. 72% of the action thus far has come in on Central Florida, moving that a full 3 points in the first few hours on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think what's being looked at here, you've got the Knights off of a bye week, and the Tar Heels, they are off those back-to-back wins, but against much weaker teams. And so the trouble for Central Florida, though, too, when I look at this one, is they've also played much weaker teams. So now they're finally stepping up in level of competition. But again, North Carolina has not looked good. And so what's going to happen here, I think the only known commodity is that what people are looking at is UNC got blasted by TCU. So that's the one that I think is really driving this early move.
Next up, UNLV at Miami-Ohio. I'm out here in Las Vegas, Scott. I've been out here. I know you and I have worked at a lot of similar places, a lot of common places over the last 20 years. And I know you spent some of your time out here in Las Vegas. I've been out here since right after high school. I came out here a month after high school. I've been here my entire adult life. And I've seen this town go from 400,000 people to over 2 million. I've seen UNLV go from about 7,500 students to about 40,000 students. And now they get to play in a real stadium, Allegiant Stadium. Off to a great start right now under the new head coach, Dan Mullen. But now they go on the road. Not a bad MAC team here, Miami, Ohio. And Miami is getting the action. At least they did on Sunday when the line opened. They were a 5-point dog. They are now a 3.5-point dog. 70% of the action on Sunday right out of the blocks came in on the MAC entry, Scott.
Yeah, and I don't know what to make of this one, Scott. I mean, because UNLV opened with a couple of games against weaker teams, and yeah, they beat UCLA, which is, of course, a big win for them, but the Bruins are a mess. They fired their head coach now. So what can we really make of UNLV at this point? But when I look at this, it's intriguing because you have an 0-2, MAC team that's getting market attention, and they're facing an undefeated 3-0 team. The Redhawks are playing their home opener, so this one, though, is a really tough one for me, Scott, to make of this matchup.
Yeah, I was watching that New Mexico game against UCLA in front of about 300 people in Pasadena. I might be exaggerating, but not that much, Scott.
Yes.
It was a really, really low turnout in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. And it's never been a great, situation playing at the Rose Bowl. There's been talk of maybe sharing Memorial Coliseum with USC at some point. I was there a few times over the years, and I can remember being there in '94 when I saw my hometown Huskers come out to UCLA, and there were about 60,000 people in the stands, of which about 40,000 were Nebraska fans. And I'm
Yes.
telling you, the other night, as you kind of hit on, we really don't know a lot about UNLV. That UCLA win looked great, but then UCLA comes out, lays an egg against New Mexico at the Rose Bowl. And then, of course, their coach gets fired on Sunday. He should have been fired. It was a good firing, I believe. Next up, this is the game I've been waiting for. Illinois and Indiana. I cannot wait. Indiana opened 3.5. They've been bet up to 4.5. And, of course, going into this season, both of these teams were on a lot of people's list as far as, dark horse playoff teams, maybe even better than a dark horse potential playoff team, and potential of going far once the playoffs begin. We're going to find out a lot about these two teams. Of course, again, Indiana getting the early money, 55% of the tickets, I was told, on Illinois, yet Indiana has been the team that's seen the line movement, which means, deeper pockets have been coming in on the Hoosiers.
Yeah, and that surprises me, Scott, because when I look at this one, it's one of those, I wonder, is this a setup to try and move that line up a little bit higher, and then later the Sharps come in on Illinois? Because the thing for me is I believe that the Hoosiers are really overrated based on last season, still a bit overhyped, I guess I should say. And at the same time, I think Illinois is really a team on the way up. I've already been on them this season, and I really like this Illinois team this year. So myself, I'm looking at the dog here, and I'm wondering if this is one of those types of moves. I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, Scott.
Used to see that quite a bit, before the internet, before we had so much information, more than we do now even. But, you'd put it plunk down, a couple $100,000, bigger bettors on a team. They would drive that number to where they wanted it to be, then come back and double up that initial bet to get the number they wanted and come back down the other way and make that official play, I guess you could see, on who they really wanted and the number they wanted it at. I don't know if it's so much that, but it could be because it was right out of the block, Scott. You could be onto something there with that. And Cignetti, man, I don't know how you can, you can't really judge what they've done thus far, the Hoosiers, because, boy, he's not like Kirby Smart, where he doesn't bring all the tools in the tool bag against lesser opposition. He's looking for the jugular, and he's looking to keep piling on and piling on. So we'll find out a lot about both of these teams. At 4.5, I'm kind of looking at Illinois. I'll dig into it more over the next few days as we get closer to Thursday, our release date over at DocSports.com for our college and pro football. But as of now, that surprised me a little bit to see that jump where it did. So you might be onto something there, Scott. Big matchup in Norman finds Auburn and Oklahoma. The Oklahoma Sooners open 5. They are now up to 6.5. Over 70% of the action reportedly on the Sooners in this one, Scott.
Yeah, and they look so strong already this season, and they're at home. They've had that big win over Michigan, and to me, that definitely carries a lot more weight than Auburn's lone big win was over a Baylor team that easily could be and should be 0-2 against FBS teams this season. So I do like Oklahoma here, and they've really impressed me early this season, and I don't think it's a fluke at all. So I like the Sooners here.
I got to admit, I might be a little bit wrong on Oklahoma before the season began, because I thought, obviously, Venables is a fantastic defensive coach. That's what he's known for. Figured the defense would be fine. They certainly were right out of the blocks against the Michigan Wolverines. But Mateer has really become a solid quarterback that they can depend on at Oklahoma. So we'll see how he fares against the Auburn Tigers. Interesting game. Of course, I'm an Omaha boy, but I've been out in Vegas long enough to where I can't remember how to get back to Omaha. But you look at this one, Michigan opened 2.5. It is down to 1.5. The action coming in on the Huskers on Sunday. 90% of the action, Scott, I was told by a sportsbook director on Sunday night, 90% of the action on the Cornhuskers. And if anybody saw this on Saturday afternoon, this line was as high as 3.5, all the way down to 1.5. Your thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, Nebraska's 3-0, but look at who they've played. And then we were just talking about Oklahoma, so Michigan's lone loss was against Oklahoma, and that's a great team. So I agree with the move here. I think that, the Wolverines deserve to get some action here. I mean, look, they've already traveled to face Oklahoma in Norman. They're not going to be intimidated by going to Nebraska, which, of course, is a fantastic place for college football, no doubt about it. But I think Nebraska's a little overrated just based on that 3-0 start to the season.
Yeah, it's tough to tell. I mean, you don't beat Houston Christian and Akron and say we're back.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it was a tough game against Cincy, and what they did do that they haven't done for about 8 years is win a close one. So they finally did win a close game against them. And of course, I think they had a 1-score win in the bowl game under Matt Rule. But yeah, this certainly will give us a lot of info on where the Huskers stand and whether or not Underwood can come in as a freshman and play better on the road in this particular game than he did against Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners a few weeks ago. I wanted to bring up this game because it's not been as much betting as what I wanted to talk about, because people are going to wake up on Monday morning and see that Missouri opened 9.5 and moved a full 4 points in most shops. They're up to 13.5. A big reason for that is South Carolina's quarterback is listed anywhere from questionable to doubtful on Sunday. So while the action wasn't as brisk as some of the other games we're talking about, I did want to mention that, Scott, that Missouri has been adjusted, I think, a little bit more than moved based on betting up to 13.5.
Yeah, and they're 3-0 and piling up points. And the Gamecocks, they definitely got exposed by Vanderbilt, but of course losing the quarterback was a big part of that, and just a turnover-driven loss on the one hand, but on the other hand, they really got dominated in the trenches, and that concerns me about South Carolina. But they're going to be in bounce-back mode here, but I don't really trust either side in this one, Scott. I mean, I think that, of course, like you said, we understand why this line has moved as it has, and I do like what I'm seeing from Missouri, but I mean, laying about 2 touchdowns here, I don't know. This, for me, is a stay-away game.
Final game of the line move report for this week before we get to best bets. Southern Miss at Louisiana Tech. Techsters laying 2. Now, this one, flipped favorites. Louisiana Tech was a 1.5-point dog. They're now laying 2. And Scott, right before we came on, I saw some 2.5s starting to pop up. So Louisiana Tech has moved as much as 4 points in some spots. One particular shop not only went to 2.5, but then had extra juice on that 2.5. Punching up the info I got from the books earlier, and over 90% of the action on La Tech on Sunday afternoon and evening, which explains that big line move, moving from a short dog to kind of starting to become a decent-sized favorite here, Scott.
Yeah, and this one's very interesting to me. I understand the move when you look at the fact Southern Miss was 3-9 2 years ago, and then last year they went 1-11. But here's my big question: why is a team that went 4-20 the last 2 years? I mean, Louisiana Tech's nothing special, but why are the Golden Eagles? Why did they open up as a favorite on the road here? So very interesting to me. But Southern Miss coming off those back-to-back wins, they've got some momentum building. And I don't know, this is one I a lot of times when these lines flip like this, I like to be on the original side, so I would be looking at Southern Miss in this one. But again, this is another game. It's hard to trust a team that's 4-20 the past 2 seasons combined. So
yeah, I looked at my power ratings as soon as I saw this big move, one of the bigger moves, because I did flip, favorites like it did. And in my power ratings, which I don't include when I make my lines, I make them a week in advance. So I made my lines for all the games for this coming week before this last week's, September 13 and 14 games were played. And I actually had a La Tech at 1. So I was fine with the initial move, but now it's getting a little crazy there late Sunday night as we headed to Monday morning, now that some books are coming in at 2.5. Scott, get your best bet ready. I'm going to tell everybody about how they can get that free $60 account at DocSports.com. If you're not yet a member, folks, you click on the link below the video, get yourself set up for a free $60 account, and then you can use those free $60 on any of our daily packages over at DocSports.com. Scott's, mine, anybody else over at Doc Sports. And it's a great way to give DocSports.com a trial run, if you will. All right, Scott, best bet, what you got for us for the weekend of, that'll be Thursday the 18th is when it all begins, Saturday the 20th. What you got?
Yeah, and I've got an early game and a surprising early start because this one's in the Mountain Time Zone. But Utah and Texas Tech are facing off at noon Eastern Time. And certainly I respect that Texas Tech is off to a 3-0 start, but they face a much easier schedule than Utah. And in fact, the Red Raiders have been home for all 3 games this season. So now they finally go on the road. And I know Utah's beaten UCLA, but a win at UCLA, win at Wyoming, and the Utes are only giving up 8 points per game so far this season, and they're so strong in the trenches. And I know that I just feel strongly that Coach Willingham and the Utes, they're on a mission after the way last season ended. And right now, I'm not going to step in front of that freight train. I think that the Utes are going to keep on rolling. And this is one I'll be watching because this line, we've seen it around as high as 4.5, and now it's settling in right now at 3.5. And I do like Utah quite a bit for this weekend.
I got a best bet. I'm going to go back to the top of our show, and I'm going to Talk a little bit about TCU, and I think it's 7 or less, which again, it's 7s, couple of 6.5s out there after the initial movement. But you hit it on the head at the top. First of all, they're in revenge. For those who like the revenge angle, sometimes it's an overused term. But TCU did lose 66-42 to SMU last year. They're piling up the yardage on the ground and through the air. I like Josh Hoover, the quarterback for TCU. He's at 76% of his passes thus far, 6 touchdowns, only 1 INT. And as far as SMU is concerned, I mean, I know it was a tough spot last week in between a couple of big games, but Missouri State's up 10-0 before you can blink an eye. And it was 10-0 with about 3 minutes to go in the half before SMU finally got on the board. So they're a little sluggish in that game, but they gave up 600 yards to Baylor in that overtime loss a couple of weeks ago. And I was looking at last year's game, Scott. TCU lit up SMU through the air, over 400 yards passing. SMU got 3 non-offensive touchdowns, a fumble return, a punt return, an INT return, all came in for SMU in that 24-point win. I do believe this is a spot where we can talk a little revenge and TCU gets the job done. Again, jump in at 7 or less is what I like it at. Right now, there's a few 6.5s and a bunch of 7s as that line has moved up towards the Texas Christian Horned Frogs. Scott Rickenbach, man, we're going to be working together every week, and you're going to be doing your daily videos at least 5 or 6 days a week, I would imagine, over at DocSports.com, so the folks can check out Rickenbach. He's been around forever. Don't let the names Rickenbach and Spreitzer scare you, Europe, okay? Because it is Scott and Scott. But anyway, from Canada and the USA, right? Scott, aren't you a Canadian guy?
I've spent some time in Canada, but yeah, it's now in Europe actually. So I'm over here in Eastern Europe now. So, yeah, I spent 4 years in Vegas before coming out here as well, and thrilled to be at Doc Sports and happy to be working with you, Scott.
Appreciate it, everybody. He's Scott. I'm Scott. We'll be here every Sunday night, Monday morning with these college football first moves, these first sharp moves and early best bets. If you like the videos, folks, please click on that thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the guys' videos over at DocSports.com. For Scott, I'm Scott. Let's put them in the win column, everybody. We'll talk to you again throughout the week. Check it out.